Welcome back to Moving to Tucson. My name's Doug Trudeau and I'll be your host. Today I'm going to talk about the cooling down of the market and why. I'm going to give you 9 reasons why I believe the market is not going to end up like it did back in 2008 and 2009, which I experienced back during that time. And I encourage you to check out other videos from other realtors and other professionals and economists and stuff. Inflation is definitely affecting the market right now. On the 27th and 28th of July, the Feds are going to be evaluating again where the market's at, where we're at with inflation, and see if they're going to raise the rate again. So before I get any further, I'd like to ask you to please be sure to subscribe. Hit the like button. It helps the YouTube algorithm so that I get more views and get better rating at it. I need more and more subscribers. I don't have enough subscribers right now, so if you'd be kind enough to subscribe, that'll help me out. That'll help move me up in the ratings, and I'll be able to produce more and even better videos in the future. Reason number 9. Lending laxness of the past. Lenders were just handing out loans to people left and right, whether they qualified. If you could breathe, you could get a house loan. So they started lending more B notes than they should have, which led to a lot of buyers. There was a frenzy about it. Everybody wanted to get into the game. There were a lot of wannabe investors that didn't know what they were doing. They got into the game. They signed these adjustable rate loans where within a year their mortgage rates almost doubled. And the market was headed for definite failure. Reason number 8. A lot of buyers didn't have any skin in the game back then, so to speak. They were getting loans for 100% of the purchase price, and in some cases above 100%. Now, a lot of people took advantage of that, and they ended up upside down on that. There were people that got in early, and then they turned around and they refinanced for even more. It was just a crazy, crazy time. Present lending practices. Now today there's a lot more restrictions. We had the Frank-Dodd Act back then that restricted a lot as far as lending. I'd like to take a little bit of time to talk about the Dodd-Frank Act and how it has impacted on mortgages today and the real estate market and is protecting us from what happened back in 2008 and 2009. The Dodd-Frank Act of 2010 was a reaction to the housing bubble of 2008 and 2009. With that came several restrictions on lenders. As a result of this reform, mortgage underwriters are required to look at a minimum of 8 deciding factors. Current or reasonably expected income or assets. Before, during the bubble, if you said, oh yeah, I make $10,000 a month, there wasn't a lot of checking on that. They basically went off your word. But now you have to show proof. You can't just say that, well, I have a certain income. You have to show proof on it, which is a good thing. Current employment status. Before, people would say, well, I'm self-employed, or I'm getting a new job, or yada yada. And loan officers were just writing loans left and right based off people's word. Now the underwriters have to check, make sure you're employed. They want to make sure you're employed for a certain amount of time. If you've only been employed for 30 days, they're going to say, okay, come back in 3 months, 6 months, and let us know. If you got promoted within your company, are you on a probationary period, et cetera, et cetera. So they want to make sure that based off the income that you're stating, that it's sound and you're going to continue to get that income. Monthly mortgage payment. The underwriter is going to double check and make sure based on everything that you turn in that you can make the monthly mortgage payments and continue to make them for months on end and hopefully years on end and not default on. While looking at your monthly mortgage payments, they're going to look at your monthly payments on other loans. Do you have a student loan? Do you have a car loan? Do you have a boat loan? Do you have an RV loan? Do you have a loan at the jewelry store or other places? What type of loans you have, what interest rate? But they look at it very carefully. They want to make sure that you're not going to default on your loan. current debt obligations, alimony, child support, other obligations that you may have that may interfere with your being able to make your mortgage payment. Again, they're protecting to make sure you don't default. They're also going to look at monthly payments for mortgage related obligations, HOA fees, any assessments for homes in that area, etc., etc. They want to make taxes, insurance, stuff like that. They want to make sure that you can meet all those obligations and again, not default on the mortgage payment. They're going to look at monthly debt to income ratio, DTI, or residual income. You know, do you have any CDs coming in? Do you have any other type of income? Do you have a second job? Stuff like that. Do you have family trust money coming in? Things like that to make sure, again, they don't want you to default on your payments. Credit history is going to be a big thing. They want to know, are you making your payments on time? Are you defaulting on it? Have you maintained good credit for a period of time? The higher your credit score, the better your interest rate is going to be. They've increased the credit score requirement since 2008, 2010 bubble because people with lower scores were the ones that had a tendency to default. So naturally, they're going to be wanting to have people with a higher score. Appraisers got beat up really bad because some appraisers were getting with lenders and they were appraising houses for a lot more than what they were worth and getting paid for doing so. Lender restrictions today is, number one, the lender can't even talk to the appraiser. See, rent costs. Now, I talked earlier about people getting loans that shouldn't have gotten loans. Rents at that time were extremely low. They were lower than what a mortgage payment was. So was it easier to make a mortgage payment that went from $800 to $1,600 or go over in a house for $600? Kind of a no-brainer there. It's easier to just walk away. It wasn't my money. It was the bank's money. So, oh well, that's the attitude a lot of people had back then. Rents right now are a lot higher. I did a video a little while back about what's happening with rents and inflation and people becoming homeless. The average rent in the Tucson area is around 2,000. Nationwide, I think it's even a little bit higher than that. Number 5, talked a little bit about interest rates, and here we are. Interest rates. Interest rates back then were a lot higher than they are now. Now, interest rates over the last 2 years, from late 2019 to up to early 2022, were at unprecedented low. I mean, we thought we were in hog heaven with 4.5% when they dropped down to 2.5%, and that seemed to be the norm. Everything was under 3%. People got used to it, and a lot of buyers entered the market that probably wouldn't have entered the market without it. Well, now interest rates are starting to increase along with curbing inflation. So that's going to have an impact. So interest rates right now, they're not bad. I mean, I remember a day back in the 1980s when interest rates were around between 13 and 18%. That was horrendous back then. But you're talking about a $75,000, $85,000, $100,000 home back then, and a $100,000 home is like a $400,000 or $500,000 home now. And interest rate now, if interest rates jumped to 18%, it'd be devastating. Then you'd really see a serious impact. But interest rates have increased, are increasing slowly, but they're not having as big an impact on the market right now as a lot of people predicted. Sure, some people have left the market, some people have been driven out of the market. I have a client right now, last year in July, he qualified for $250,000. We were able to find a few houses then. Unfortunately, he got a little bit too picky and the market passed him by. Now, that same buyer with even more money to put down, he's got another $3,000 to put down. Well, he went from 250,000 to 215,000 in his qualification. He went in the wrong direction. The market went in the other direction. So the price homes he was looking at for 250 last year are around 275 to 285 this year. So he's having a really tough time. So if you qualify, that's something to think about. Number 4, number of millennials entering the market. A number of millennials entered the market that wouldn't have entered the market otherwise if the rates hadn't been so low. So they got in at a good time. They got in at a good rate. Yeah, houses prices were a little bit high, but you're not going to see the decline like we saw many years ago, where I saw houses that were selling in the 700s selling for a few years later for 380,000. So the market is slowing down, and appreciation is going to slow down with it. New home construction. New home construction, there's still a lot of new home construction out there, and new home builders are providing homes now, not as cheap as they were 2 years ago, not as at the price, but they're starting to show some incentives, and you're going to see that happen more and more. No longer will sellers be able to put their houses on the market for 10 to 20% above value. We're probably going to get right back to around that 3% that was pre-2004, and maybe 1%. We'll see. I'm going to show you something in a little bit that's going to give you an indication that, hey, things are starting to change just a little bit. Home equity. Number 2, home equity. Home equity back then was just, it was non-existent. There was no equity. You paid $300,000 for a house. It was now appraised at $150,000 or $200,000, and your mortgage payment went from $800 to $1,600 or $2,500, and you were stuck with a house for a long time. It took from 2009, 2008, it took up to almost 2018, 2019, 2020 before people started seeing what they paid back then coming back. So we're starting to see the prices of about 12 years ago in houses. People saw that back in 2020, and it started to increase, but now it's slowing down. Prices are going to get to where they need to be. Number 1, the absorption rate. The absorption rate is something that back in 2008 and 2009, we were looking at houses that were right around the absorption rate in 2009 in the MLS was right around 10.9 months. Now, to give you an indication as far as absorption rate, the absorption rate is an indicator as to whether it's a buyer's market or a seller's market. It's one of several indicators. So back then, it was definitely a buyer's market. The average in Tucson is right around 4.5%, 5.5%. That's what it was before. That may fluctuate a little bit over time, but that was pretty much the norm. That was a balance between buyer and seller where they were pretty equal. It wasn't a buyer's market. It wasn't a seller's market. It was a equal market when it's between 4 and 5. Well, at 10.9, that's a significant difference in the pricing. Then we got down to 2016. In January 2016, we dropped down to 5.2. Now we're in that balance that I was talking about earlier, and things were going pretty good. But I noticed, it went down in 2013, went up a little bit in 2014, 15, the beginning of 2016. 2016 was the beginning of the slide, the long slide of the absorption rate getting down to right around a month. Now, at a month, that's crazy. That's definitely a seller's market. So if you look at the diagram that I have here, if you look at it, you'll see that it follows down to right about 1.1% last year, around January. And now we're ticking up to right around 1.2%. So now you can see in October 2021, we were down to 1.1. Look at that under the aerial. See that little tiny tick of the absorption rate coming up? If you noticed earlier, there was no increase in the absorption rate at all. either it was level or slight down, level, slight down, level, slight down. If you look at it closely, there was no uptick at all. But if you look at now in 2022, in late June, there was just a slight uptick in the absorption rate. Will that be followed up in July? Stick around for future videos and I'll let you know on that. That's going to be a good indicator that we're starting to get more houses on the market. So I'm going to be following that real close and comparing, what is the number of homes coming on the market? What's the number of homes going under contract? Is there an indication of a difference there? So I hope that was helpful to you. I hope you got a lot out of it. If you like what you saw, please don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, ring the bell for future videos, and I'll be telling you more about what's happening in the Tucson market. Meanwhile, in between some of those videos, I'm going to be doing different areas around Tucson. I have an area I was out at an open house a few days ago up on the west side, and I thought, nobody's done any videos of this community, so I'm going to swing in there and guess where I'm going tomorrow with my drone and my camera. So stick around, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.